hear me? Yes. Okay, so my name is Courtney Hawkins, and I'm here from FEGS. And as the New York program representative, I'd like to welcome our out-of-town partners into the city for this conference. I also want to tell you there's a button on this that if I push will make the whole screen black. So I'm going to try not to push it. I'd like to start by asking everyone here to think about someone that they may know in their lives in their 20s who has graduated from college and had to return home to live with their parents because they've had a difficult time making it on their own. So now that you've pictured this person, I now want you to imagine that that 20-something, in addition to facing the current challenges of our economy, doesn't have a high school diploma, has never worked before, has experienced a lifetime of abuse and neglect, and doesn't have a home to go towards. Unfortunately, this is the case for thousands of young adults across the nation each year that age out of our foster care system. Although foster care is designed to remove abused and neglected children from their home and then return them back there, each year 25,000 young adults nationally and 1,000 in New York City age out of the system without a family. This leaves an 18 to 21-year-old out there on their own to live independently and try to make a living. As you can imagine, these young people lead extremely fragile existences with high rates of unemployment, access to the shelter system and homelessness, and incarceration. Disturbed by this, in 2006, the Heckscher Foundation for Children convened a group of leaders, and from that, the Academy was born. And the Academy has really three core components. First, we offer integrated education, career development, and supportive services for any young person in New York City who's 16 years or older who's going to age out of the foster care system. Second, we've designed a program that is tailored to the needs of the young people that come to our door. Most programs aren't prepared to deal with the needs of foster care youth. We have a no eject, no reject policy, which basically means you can do a lot of things and mess up a lot of times, and we will stay there with you to ensure that we don't kind of replicate the rejection that many of these young people have experienced in their lives. We tailor the program so that young people can receive as little or as much service as they need. We focus on interim outcomes. We learned very quickly that if you have an 18-year-old who's reading at a third grade level, it's going to take them a long time to get to a GED, and so we have to look at their literacy levels. We have to celebrate their achievements as they move from a third grade level to a sixth grade level in the program. And we have a primary person approach, so every young person is tied to a mentor who guides them in the program and helps them transition, prepare for this transition out of care and stays with them after they leave foster care. Third, we've designed a program that is highly efficient. We partner closely with the foster care agencies within the New York City foster care system. They bring expertise about working with the young people. They know these young people, and we bring expertise around education and workforce development. And because of this efficiency and our flexibility, we're able to do this all for about $5,000 per year per young person. We've seen some promising results to date. We've served more than 600 young people, and this is a group of young people that don't stay in programs. They either get kicked out or they dropped out. And we've seen that nearly 9 out of 10 achieve some kind of educational gain or stay active in educational services, and more than 8 out of 10 have gotten a job or stayed engaged in career development services. We've also experienced tremendous momentum within the system. So we have great market penetration. We've served more than 600 young adults. We've gone from only 5 foster care agencies referring to us at the beginning to now serving basically the entire foster care system. And the number of foundations that have provided funding to us has gone from 1 to 11. We've been identified as a best or promising practice in 3 external assessments, most recently by the Center for an Urban Future's Fostering Careers report. And we've garnered tremendous public sector support. Both the commissioners of the New York City and New York State child welfare agencies wrote letters of support for our scaling plan. And the commissioner of the New York City Administration for Children's Services identified this population as one of his key priorities in his most recent strategic plan. So our scaling plan is to move from serving nearly 200 young adults a year to 1,500 a year, which would represent being able to offer these services to just about every young person aging out of care in New York City that needs them. We have three primary strategies around scaling. One is about public policy advocacy. This scaling plan is as much about increasing the number of slots for young people as it is about changing the conversation about the needs of this population. Second, we're doing a lot of private fundraising to be able to move our program to another location. We anticipate that we would replicate in Brooklyn next, so that we would go through the experience of scaling the model, make sure that we have the tools and resources that we would need to do that. And third, we're really working on manualizing the program. So we're taking our policies and procedures and making them turnkey ready for other agencies to be able to provide these services throughout New York City. And we do all this with a goal that in year 7, we would be providing services to 1,500 young people across all the boroughs of New York, and that FEGS would be able to use its expertise to provide technical assistance to other providers who are doing this. The total cost of this scaling plan is $21.6 million over 7 years. This includes the direct services to young people, along with the infrastructure, the technology, the evaluation support that we would need to be able to scale the program. Our scaling plan starts with doubling our private funding, which we anticipate we'll be able to do based on the kind of traction we've gained already in the private funding community. And then transitions over to a public funding model where we start with a public funding pilot, which New York City has a history of doing for special populations. And then we transition to a fully funded public sector model, which is only $8 million a year, which in the context of the New York City budget is nothing, right? The foster care system alone is funded at $2.8 billion a year. FEGS, in addition to our experience in doing this work, has tremendous capacity to execute this scaling initiative. We serve 100,000 New Yorkers a year. We have a $250 million annual budget, and we serve people across a number of operating areas, including education, youth, literacy, employment, health and home care. We also have 14 subsidiary corporations that provide technology and HR support to other nonprofits, which gives us a really robust infrastructure to launch this kind of large-scale initiative and be able to provide technical assistance across the city. I want to say that this is a moment in time for this program to scale. People view this as an intractable problem, but we've demonstrated that this is not intractable, that we can affect the lives of this population that most people just simply write off. We have tremendous support from think tanks, from external evaluators, from senior government officials, from senior officials and executives within the foster care agency system. And this is 1,000 kids in New York City and 25,000 kids in the nation. This is a problem that we can solve, right? And it's a problem, it's a solution that represents a tremendous return on investment, both for the young people we work with. You know, we see 18-year-olds who come to our program and they say, but miss, when is it that I can't come here anymore? Because that's their frame of reference, right? There will always be an endpoint to the people trying to help them. And the impact of saying to them that we're going to stick with them through this program, we're going to stick with them as they transition out of care, and we're going to be the safety net there for them, gives them tremendous motivation and allows them to really set goals with us and move towards those goals because they know they always have a place to go for help. We also think that this program is a wise investment, right? It's an efficient cost structure, it's $5,000 a young person, and it's going to save the government tremendous money in the long term. If a year of incarceration is $40,000 and nearly half of the young men who age out of foster care are experiencing some time in prison, we think that we can demonstrate to government that this investment now up front makes sense. And as such, we think that this program is really ripe to be scaled nationally, and that we could take what we've learned in New York City and apply it across the country to really solve this problem. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your comment about how this, in reality, it's a very solvable problem. I think that's important. A lot of detail, it's great. There's one thing that really stands out, and it's that one slide with the 300% jump in youth served. So if you could just elaborate on that a little more, both from the funding aspect, it sounds like you're anticipating a New York City contract of sorts, but also how do you operationalize that, and how possible is this?
Sure. So this scaling model has actually already kind of been implemented in New York City out of the mayor's office for the Center for Economic Opportunity. And so what we profile here is what they've done there, where we use private dollars to really design, implement, and ensure we have an effective model. Then we ask government to take that model and pilot it, right? And after a period of a 3-year pilot, after we show success in that pilot, they are able to kind of take that success and make the final investment, which they've done for a lot of special populations in New York City already. This $8 million, much of it already exists in the city budget in other systems, right? So these young people are getting services in the homeless services, they're getting services in the public assistance system, they're getting services in the employment system, they're getting services in the youth system. And so what we're looking to do is really take that money and kind of reappropriate it in a better way in a program that is specially tailored for that group, so that we can achieve better outcomes, as opposed to now where they're just kind of thrown in with anyone else who walks in the door.
And there's a real momentum around this since this Center for an Urban Future report came out that Courtney mentioned. A task force has been formed that the commissioner of the New York City Foster Care Agency has agreed to lead and be a part of, and it includes all of the government agencies that experience the long-term expenditures that these young people create when they become homeless, unemployed, and incarcerated. And so there's a real momentum right now in New York City to make this kind of leap over the next 7 years as we planned it.
The one other thing that I'll say is there, nationally the foster care population is getting smaller, right? So it's fewer than 15,000 kids in New York City now. It was 50,000 in the 80s, right? And states are being given the opportunity to kind of lock in their current funding, and then as their population goes down, be able to use that extra money that they now have for innovative programs. And so while the foster care population is going down, the number of teenagers and youth aging out are representing a more significant percentage in that population. And so we think this would be also a great place to take some of that extra money and apply it for an innovative program.
I'm always interested in the programs that have some collaborative element between the private sector and the public sector. You just used the word that I think probably best describes it, which is innovation, right? The public sector is generally not known for being very innovative. What concerns me a little bit, though, is in this slide, you show it obviously fairly dramatically. Your private funding disappears and your public funding is 100% of your program. There's two concerns there. One is public funding is a bit nebulous these days, and it's not clear that it's going to get any better anytime soon. And number two, if you're 100% reliant from a financial standpoint, how would you maintain your operational independence if they're paying all the checks?
I think that I think that this scaling plan represents an opportunity to really refine the model in a way that we're bringing the model to government. We're dictating what the model should look like, and I think that the response that we're getting from government is they're interested in taking that model from us and replicating it kind of in its purest form. So I don't know that we worry about government writing the checks. I mean, ultimately, large-scale programs of this nature are funded by government nationally, right? And ultimately, these young people are costing the government a lot of money. And I think it's that return on investment case that we can make that allows us to project this kind of government investment, which I will say again, on this slide it looks like a lot, right? It's $8 million. It's not that much money, right? In the context of the city budget alone, it's a tiny kind of spot on the budget. And so I think that I don't think it's unrealistic
The other thing that I would say is that foster youth are really in a special category of people. You know, in this country, there's two things basically that the government can do that is incredibly invasive in a citizen's life, right? One is they can imprison you, and in some places there's the death penalty. And two is you can be removed from your parents and placed in foster care. And when the government takes an action of that, you know, magnitude and severity, these young people are actually the responsibility of the government. And so I think there is an additional onus in that it is actually appropriate for government to be taking up the services for these young people. So I think from a philosophical standpoint, it makes sense for government to be fully owning this.
1B. And that was a thoughtful answer, and I appreciate it. I know it wasn't easy, and I'm going to challenge you a little bit more now. I mean, basically what you're talking about right now was a manifestation of the inefficiencies of the public system. And the same sort of question I raised with the prior presenters, things change. Foster, you just mentioned, I mean, you've gone from 50,000 foster children down to 15. God willing, the trend stays the same, but I think we all know and fear that might not be the case. And so again, what I'm worried about is once you get enveloped completely into the public system, your ability to sort of find those not so nuanced issues in the public system to improve the public system, because that's ultimately what we're talking about here. The genesis of your program was to improve a fault within the public system. Once you're part of the public system, you're subject to all the inefficiencies of a public system. Right. So what I'll summarize, answer the question, I would encourage you not to go 100% public system.
You know, I think it's fair. I mean, I think what we're looking at here is scaling this program. As an agency, we maintain kind of a balance of public and private funding across the work that we do, which allows us to have more flexibility and kind of continue to innovate while we're operating publicly funded programs, but I think it's a fair point. The other thing that I will just say quickly is that something that's going to change is that one of the reasons why there hasn't been a government investment in this population is that they're currently invisible because nobody's paying attention to where they end up. And there was recent federal legislation that now requires states to track what happens to this group of young people. So there is about to be some very disturbing data that's going to come out that's going to show our prisons and our homeless shelters are filled with young people that the government was taking care of, and they're going to have to do something. And I think to your point around maintaining some private funding for innovation and ensuring that we're able to be flexible is a fair one.